Conservatives are mad as hell right now. We have every right to be. We are absolutely motivated and keeping a positive attitude, which is remarkable. As you should notice, at this point in time, Joe Biden is ostensibly our president elect, and yet there's no rioting in the streets. You don't see MAGA people with red hats, smashing cars and looting businesses. We are looking at data and we are going, okay, what exactly happened here? What did the Democrats do to steal this election? It just does not make any sense to us. So we're mad as hell, but we are here to walk you through our thought process on how we believe this election was stolen. There are 30% of Democrats who are as perplexed as we are that, that somehow, with zero campaigning and a general lack of enthusiasm, how Joe Biden sailed his way to this purported presidency. A couple of ways we're doing it is we're looking outside in, right? We're looking at analysis from a 10,000, 50,000 foot view, if you will. From the outside in, there's a lot of analysis that will suggest a couple different things that we can dive into. But one of the ideas is, even though most elections give you final vote totals, I mean, even in communist countries, socialist countries, where there's a fake simulacrum of an election process, they will say, hey, here's the vote totals at the end of the night. We don't have a reported time series of vote totals, but we do have the Internet Wayback Machine, and we do have the dumps that were given to the media in terms of showing, what the sequence of the allocation and tabulation of votes are, right? If you look at those, there's one easy way to look for anomalies, and that is the proportion of votes in any jurisdiction, whether it's a precinct or a county or a state, right? That proportion of votes is going to tend towards whatever the eventual ratio of the winner to the loser is, right? So if you look at that over time, the thing that stands out about the election on the night of November 3rd is that in very large vote dumps, and what I mean by vote dumps are the number gets updated on the Secretary of State's website with some new aggregate, right, that has been pulled in from counting. Those dump totals, if you have a small set or a large set, if you have a small set, say you have 100 votes or 2,000 votes come in, the vote ratio could be all over the board, right? You could have it be a highly Republican precinct or a highly Democratic precinct, and you can see huge skewings of, okay, this precinct went 85% for Biden and only 15% for Trump. Okay. But in very large sets of data, you will see that vote ratio will tend towards the norm of whatever the overall state is. A number of, not, I don't want to say forensic experts, I'm going to say like just normal Joe Schmo data scientists or people who can do eighth grade math. You go out there and you say, okay, the larger the vote set, you can have huge dumps of data, okay, and you can have very skewed dumps of data, but you can't have them at the same time. If you have a very large dump of, say, 100,000 votes, you will never see a vote propensity or a voter ratio, winner to loser, in a way that would severely deviate from the entire population. Unless you had your most urban center, that actual precinct would have to report all at the same time, right? That's the only way it would happen. And we know from the time series, we know that the precincts were doing incremental updates. So given that they couldn't all report at the same time, you do have to see that these large population sets that are, more than a couple standard deviations off of the total voter propensity in the state is absolutely anomalous. You can look at previous elections, you can determine this. So that's an outside in thing, one data point that we're looking at. And there's a great article we posted that speaks to the four biggest deltas of votes and how those effectively rendered Joe Biden the ostensible winner of this election, right? Good analysis, outside in. Another outside in analysis we can do is that Trump did, first of all, way better than his numbers in 2016. But not only that, but there's no demographic that he clearly lost in. And this is related to exit polls and other polling, right? And I know the polling's wrong, but fundamentally, this is at least what the exit polling, which if you think it was manipulated, it's still saying the following things. One, the Latino vote increased from roughly 12% for Trump in 2016 to over 30%. Okay. Likewise, the black vote, we had this crazy racist in the White House. We went through the Charlottesville debacle, the Muslim ban talk during the run up to the actual presidency of Donald Trump. Every little thing that Donald Trump said was viewed through this prism of his racism, and then 50% more African Americans voted for Trump in 2020 than in 2016. I mean, you can't make this up. It's crazy. There's no demographic in which Trump clearly lost. And then they tell us, okay, well, no, but he lost with the suburbanites. He really lost because his ineffectiveness in COVID. I mean, that was the main thing that Joe campaigned on from his basement with his big black mask on, was that, oh, okay, well, Trump had a terrible response to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll do a much better job, even though he was the one that was, decrying Trump as being xenophobic for stopping travel from China in the early days of the virus. So what does Joe Biden now do? Now Joe Biden says, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to pick Fauci as my point man. Didn't Trump have Fauci in his team? And didn't Trump listen to everything Fauci? I mean, even if Fauci was flip-flopping, Trump was still taking his input and, for the most part, enacting the guidelines that Fauci was setting. And now Joe Biden's going to do everything differently, but he's going to get Fauci in and follow his orders, just as Trump has done. So that was his main campaign message. It's ridiculous. So that's the outside in. Then we have the inside out. We have security cameras that actually show suitcases full of ballots being pulled out from under the table after they told the poll watchers, who are there to keep an eye on these people and make sure nothing, crazy happens. Look out for weird shenanigans. They send these people home, and then they pull these suitcases out from under the tables. I mean, you think these are made up videos? You have people who were poll watchers who talk about, sure, there's a number of anecdotal situations where, not proper instruction was given to an elderly voter on a machine, and that person had been voting a certain way for a while, and this was a new system. I get that. We had a massive mail-in voting push, and we in the spring were constantly saying, you guys, you can't have mail-in voting. We already have lax voter ID requirements and very lax ways and easy ways to put in a provisional ballot if you're not on the registration, but we have a very, very eager means of registering you. We have all those things going. With mail-in voting, we have no checks on your authentication, your eligibility as a citizen to vote, your eligibility in terms of being an actual resident of the state. We have very little checks on those. And yet we had all these ballots coming across state lines. I mean, the guy at the USPS who gave his testimony of transporting ballots from New York down to, in the end, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, he's going, it didn't occur to me at the time that I was taking all these ballots that had return addresses on them, that were these handwritten ballots that were bound for a Philadelphia election or from a Pennsylvania election, from the state of New York. Um, these guys are talking about, okay, interstate delivery of massive amounts of ballots. I mean, the level of fraud and the level of tangible evidence that says we should take a closer look at this election is insurmountable. I mean, the idea that people could be, you can see these people on camera surreptitiously passing a USB thumb drive. You know from their body language that what they're doing is something not good. Okay, we have a known company in Smartmatic and Dominion. They have these known back doors where you know bad actors can get in through the back door, and if there's some sort of deal made where somebody's going to look the other way, well, this bad actor comes in and does whatever they're able to do through the insecure parts of this software. It's there, and these companies, one of them sold to China for $400 million in October of this year. So you can't begin to, dismiss all of these claims of a coordinated effort to absolutely, compromise the integrity of this election. And when liberals say to us, conservatives, and they say, you're really undermining our democratic process and our democratic history when you're questioning the results of an election, and you're not encouraging your guy Trump to concede. We sit there and say, like, but isn't a fraudulent election undermining our democracy? I mean, do you realize how how elusive the straws you're grasping at to say, oh yeah, that we are in our messaging undermining the integrity. The actual processes undermining the integrity are abhorrent. Lastly, today we learned that there's a 26% vote spread in terms of the, you put 100 ballots in for both Biden and for Trump, and you end up with a per 100 13 bump for Biden and a 13 drop for Trump. And we already knew that on the eve of the election, a number of these voting machines had their firmware updated. It's like at the last minute, these guys were allowed to come in and do maintenance on these machines, and then here they make these wild spreads in terms of actual hand-counted ballots, how those machines report their tabulation. It's ridiculous. So we have every right to be fired up and wanting to look at every one of these cases and wanting to get to the bottom of them. And if you actually look at the vote spreads in each of these states, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Nevada, and in Arizona, the kinds of numbers that would be thrown out from these allegations I've listed above are going to mean that the election swings the other way in terms of the state popular vote for Trump. And now that's going to be a set of electors that he has up. So it's very clear to me that with even partial of these contested states making their way to a flippage, you're going to be looking at Donald Trump over 270 and winning this election. So it's important that we talk about it. And I should also notice, the first thing I wanted to say was that there's no violence right now, and ostensibly Biden is the victor. Okay, so if that changes, if this were to flip, just know who the civil citizens are, right? That's an important thing. The second thing is conservatives could have been rather gracious over the last couple of years. We dealt with more than 2.5 years of this Mueller investigation based on this Russian collusion narrative, which completely collapsed in the media and collapsed in the courts. And we never got full vindication in it. We never got a full sense of, okay, the media was wrong, you guys were right, we jumped on that. There was no apology from the Dem side, and there was really no gloating from the Republican side, okay? Second thing, we went through an impeachment scam that had a finale as an epilogue when Hunter Biden's laptop was found, and everybody realized that there was this, Burisma scheme to basically defraud the Ukrainian people of, cost-effective natural gas, basically playing upon their national enthusiasm against Russia to um, to buy their national natural gas instead from the EU, when it was really just Russian gas that was bought and routed through the EU into. I mean, at the end of the day, we realize that all these thieves, many are who are in this Biden crime syndicate, are you know are the ones that profited a handsome sum or percentage of that 1.5 billion that they defrauded the Ukrainian people of. And so at the end of all that conversation, that was the beginning of the impeachment of Trump. It culminated in our realization that in fact the Bidens did deserve to be looked into, and yet because it was in the run up to the election, it was somehow nobody could talk about it. All the New York Post articles are scrubbed from it. We saw a level of censorship on Twitter and Facebook that we've never seen before. And it's just unconscionable that we, at the end of both of these episodes, both the Russian collusion narrative and the, the Hunter Biden and Joe Biden grift that went on with Burisma, that not only have we not gloated, we haven't grabbed libs by the back of their head and made them smell the dog crap. I mean, we really should be stuffing their noses in it, but we're not. We've been pretty gracious, and we keep rolling with the punches and trying to stay positive about Donald Trump. And I think people underestimated the fact that Donald Trump, like the citizens who support him, are not going to deal with this crazy deep state conspiracy to keep him from his rightful win in this election. He had such meteoric uptick in all these groups. We have clear evidence of fraud from the outside in all these different depositions. And these are done by people who are taking, they're effectively, I don't care if it's in a hotel ballroom, they are taking an oath and they are saying, if I am wrong and if I can be proven wrong, I will go to prison. I will spend time in the most, secure and compelling legal system that one could. And they are taking that risk because they know what they saw was true. And luckily, they're patriots. They're stepping forward. They are getting harassed, just like Trump donors are getting harassed, just like Trump voters are getting harassed. People who are coming forward in the light of the truth are being absolutely destroyed right now, and it needs to stop. It's totally un-American. So I would just like to point out that the relative level of graciousness from conservatives has been amazing, and we're fighting this to the end, and who knows what happens by January 20th, but we are fired up, and I don't think that the country is realistic in thinking they're going to basically get us to kowtow to their agenda and unify with them in a way that's in any way productive. Because right now we are so pissed off, there will be no acceptance of what is to come if you have the obviously failed ability to count everybody's vote, to count it fairly, to count it legally. We know that Donald Trump's enthusiasm was commensurate with a landslide victory, and we are looking at the data and pretty sure that bears it out, except for some very key anomalies which need to be looked into. And we think that upon being looked into, we will be vindicated and we will see Donald Trump in the White House again beyond January 20th. So talk to your conservative friends, talk to your liberal friends. We need to have this conversation because we cannot let the public feel that this is some sort of autocratic blindside that happens when the results of this election get flipped, because that will cause violence to the streets. If you believe in peace, you will reach across the aisle right now and make sure that people know that there is a true understanding this election was called too early, the fraud will be investigated, the results will be overturned, and this is not something that's being done by some crazy dictator. This is somebody who's following the law. For America's New Clothes, I'm Micah Richton. Thanks for checking us out.